everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. I haven't really felt like sitting down and filming or even really creating anything the past week with everything that's been going on. I thought today I will sit down. I'm just going to do like a really simple makeup look and just kind of have like a really open like discussion. This video isn't going to be so much about the makeup, so I'm not going to be like talking through the products because I want to kind of focus on the important things that we kind of need to speak about. But everything that I use will be linked down below. Also, all the AdSense from this video will be donated to Black Lives Matter charities. There is a couple that I've looked at, but a few of them are actually getting to the point now where they're like, we're full up, we don't want any more donations, which is incredible. But yeah, so there are a couple that I have looked at which I will be donating to. But if you know of any particular ones that maybe aren't getting quite as much attention or anything, please do comment down below. So yeah, all the money from the ads on this video will go straight to charities. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, and yeah, we're just going to sit down, have a chat and do some makeup. Okay, I'm just going to zoom you in. Don't even know like where to start. I've just, the last like week or so, however long it's even been, it's been terrifying. Obviously I live in the UK, so I've kind of been like watching everything from afar. Of course I've been using my platform on Instagram and stuff, but I feel like if I don't speak about it on here, there are a lot of people who watch my videos who maybe don't see my Instagram stuff. I felt a bit stupid to sit down and even think about filming like a makeup video, but it feels like when there's another 160,000 whatever people sitting here, it just seems really ignorant to not want to have that like discussion. And it's a lot easier to kind of have like an open conversation on here than it is on Instagram. It's obviously a bit easier for me to just sit down and talk rather than trying to get all my feelings into like one post or something. So yeah, honestly I'm one of those people that like, I truly do believe in like this generation, and I really do hope and I honestly do feel that we will be the generation to kind of change the world. We are so quick to judge and try and pin things on younger people and say you don't understand, you haven't lived through this, but time and time again, and especially at the moment, I'm just so amazed by young people turning around and saying actually no, like fuck this is enough. Like amazed by the willingness from people at the moment to actually educate themselves, to learn, to listen. Of course it's amazing and it's incredible to open people's eyes and make them realise maybe things they didn't even consciously know they were doing. But I really hope this isn't one of those things that it's a trend and it's something that bigger brands are going to try and profit off and do it to try and look good. It's been a very odd week because even brands that I follow and that I've worked with before, and even brands I bought from, I've unfollowed and blocked so many people this past week because I just can't actually bear to sit and watch these makeup brands posting statements and saying, you know, whatever, we stand with you, all this, when their foundation shade range isn't even including the people that they're standing up for. And I just think if next week you're not even gonna sit back and look at what you can actually do as a brand, which is proactive, like I just can't respect that. I can't watch you do it with no promise of any action. For example, Freck, who obviously I speak about quite a lot, they have always been one of my absolute favourite brands. I love them, I love everything about them. They actually made like a full statement, like pledging. They released the figures of how many ethnic minority staff they employ. They changed the name of their mugshot cleanser because people were obviously attaching it back to the police. And yeah, they literally held their hands up and said, we're making whole new packaging, we're going to rename it, everything. Like, that is realistically what going forward is actually going to do something. I don't think releasing a statement or trying to make a top that says Black Lives Matter is really going to help your children and grandchildren. That people will sit back and look at their own lives and think, you know, am I doing enough? White privilege is so real and it's so evident in so many parts of life, and I just think if you sit back and say it isn't your problem, you are the problem. Of course, I've grown up in the UK, in Brighton, which I'm very grateful for because I've lived somewhere like this my whole life. I think my experiences and my judgment towards people is entirely different. a like, liberal place to live, and you have people from absolutely every background, and I've grown up around people like that. So for me personally, there's never been any place for racism in my life. I've grown up in a family who absolutely don't stand for it. Really good discussions with my parents recently, with my family and my friends. Unfortunately, I know that isn't the case for everybody. I know some people will be living with people who really have completely different views to them, and that is difficult. You will be amazed by how much power just a conversation can hold. Honestly, just sitting somebody down and kind of saying to them, why do you feel like this? Because, you know, say what you want, but essentially our education system has completely failed us. You can exclude so much of this country and America, pretty much the entire Western world's history. Of course, education is always going to be the most important thing. It's one of the biggest influences in your early years, of course, are your family and your education. You don't have much else to really go on at that age. A lot of really young people now do have access to social media, which at the time I hate even thinking about because it's just the most like evil place in the world. But then with things like this, just insane to think that if that girl hadn't filmed George Floyd being murdered, nothing would have ever happened of it. Those police officers would still be at work now. Nobody would ever hold them accountable for it. So it is a blessing and a curse to be exposed to all of this all the time. You don't get to choose who brings you up. You don't choose the education system. But you do get to a point where you have all the resources around you to educate yourself. And I feel like that's kind of what is going to have to happen. I read like a lot, and that's kind of the way that I like to learn things, is through reading. I've read a lot of books over the past few years around race, and the fact that you can learn more about the history of the country you live in like 200 pages of a book than you can in 10 years of being in education, to me that says that there is obviously a massive problem. I think I've really noticed like the importance of educating maybe older people around you, because of course they're in a completely different generation to us, and so many people kind of blaming and just saying like awful things about people who honestly it is coming from a lack of understanding. You've got to remember the older generations, they weren't exposed to things like we were. If this had happened now and social media wasn't a thing, even in the UK, we would have absolutely no idea what was going on. I've obviously seen a lot of people the past week or so, British people saying the UK isn't racist, you know, why is this our problem? This is America's problem, this has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with everyone. The UK is not innocent, and I've seen so many people saying, oh, but we're not as bad here. Like, not as bad is still not good. Like, that isn't okay to be not as bad as America. I mean, America isn't setting a particularly high standard. Like, if you aren't as bad as America, that really still isn't brilliant. And is run primarily by the media. Like, if you know anything about like the British media, they are so racist, and I don't even feel like they try and hide it anymore. The things that they get away with being able to write about people is absolutely disgusting. And you think in this country, well, any country, we have like entire generations that rely on the media, and they rely on what they see in newspapers as their news source. You know, older people maybe aren't on social media, they aren't seeing these live updates on Twitter like we are. I feel like the media time and time again needs to be held accountable. You know, we had the whole thing with people being kind and people seeing firsthand how the media can literally ruin your life, and then it's just straight back to this. You only have to look at the articles that have been written about Meghan Markle compared to the ones about Kate Middleton, and it's just blatantly obvious. It has really been pissing me off recently. Like, I went onto Facebook, which is just the worst place in the world. I think I saw maybe one video of like a peaceful protest, and the rest were the people who are being really violent at the protests and stuff like that, which is honestly like 1% of people. But of course people are clinging on to that because they want to have a reason to turn around and say this is wrong, other than the fact that just saying they're fucking racist. See, I think until you have walked in somebody's shoes and you have felt a lifetime of what these people are feeling, I don't really feel like you can ever sit there and tell somebody how they should feel or how they should react. You saw your friends and your family constantly being treated like that by the police. You had to fear for your children's lives, for your lives. I do not believe that any British person would sit down and say, no, I'm going to be peaceful about this. People are angry about everything, like absolutely everything, which is completely irrelevant. But you give them an actual issue where people are dying, like, all lives matter, not my problem. Police are only there to keep you safe. It is the entire job. If you know you aren't capable of that, do not apply for that job. Like, I saw this tweet that was like, imagine if you called the fire brigade and they just turn up and start beating the shit out of you. Like, it would never happen. The worst thing about the people that are saying shit is that literally you would only have to maybe read like one book, or even if you don't want to read, you could watch like a film, which will take, what, 2-3 hours maximum, and you probably won't feel like that at the end of it. People honestly find it easier to log on to Facebook, find a little Lad Bible article, share it and say, oh, this is why we shouldn't be protesting in this country. The police and in institutions, it obviously needs to go so much deeper, but I feel with just the public's opinion, it honestly is just education, and it's actually being put in their place and being told, like, you shouldn't say that, why do you feel like that? Accused so many times in the past of being like too political and like, oh, take the joke, like it's a joke. With anything to do with like sexism, homophobia, racism, I literally cannot bear it. And I was never around people, my friends have never made jokes about anything like that, because I don't know, your jokes are never funny. I don't get it. I would just ask anybody to watch somebody they love be killed for no reason by the police and then tell me how funny it is after that. And yeah, I would assure you that you really wouldn't find it funny. I just, like, now we're obviously in a completely different position than people have ever been in. We've got so many young people who have massive platforms, who actually have the voice to say how they feel and make changes. You know, as a young white woman, I would be embarrassed to sit back and do nothing and say it's not my problem. It is everybody's problem. Of course it is. If you've ever heard somebody make a racist joke, if you've ever judged somebody based on the colour of their skin, whether you actually realise you're doing it or not, it is of course a problem. No, I've been kind of angry myself, to be honest, and I know that whatever I'm feeling is a fraction of what people have felt their whole lives. But just seeing brands obviously thinking, oh my god, we should post like a black girl on the makeup page now. If you know next week you're going to go back to posting your skinny blonde fucking girls, like, just fuck off. Like, of my friends in like the makeup industry, whatever you want to call it, are so incredibly talented and are just beautiful, and they've been sat there the whole time. Like, they've always been there, they've always been talented. If you are only noticing them now, it's your fault. It's nothing down to them. See, if brands are going to turn around now and say, shit, like, we haven't been doing enough, we do need to do better, good for you, but actually do it. Like, it is not enough to make a post on Instagram and say, oh, I stand with you, we're going to do this. But when, like, so L'Oreal, for example, always been the worst, let's be honest. Anne-Marie Bergdorf, she's just the most amazing woman ever. So a little bit of background info, you probably have heard about this anyway, but I'm going to try and talk to that. I did a campaign a few years ago, tried to be inclusive, which for them means 4 black girls in a group of, what, 70 something? Love that. I spoke out about racism, and they dropped her. They said, we don't want to use you anymore. They paid her an insulting amount of money for the usage of her images, and yeah, completely dropped her from the campaign. And then last week they posted a statement saying, we stand with you, we see you. To me, that's just an example of a brand posting something because everybody else is posting it and to look good, when realistically they've never stood for these people before. They've actually discriminated these people directly. Do not bullshit anybody and say that you stand for these people now because you see other brands doing it. Like, it's actually terrifying when you realise how many people don't feel that way, because unless you know, it is quite rare that there ever really is a conversation about race, unfortunately, and I feel like this has opened up a lot of conversation, which is amazing. But yeah, it has really made me realise, like, people that you never expect to feel that way, you're like, what? Like, you've been given these opportunities in life to be shit. But I feel, yeah, as somebody who's part of, I never want to say the beauty community because I think it's the cringiest thing in the world, but that, and somebody who is part of the tattoo industry as well, so much of tattooing comes from indigenous cultures, British people barely own anything, to be honest with you. If you are profiting off a culture but you don't want to acknowledge the people it came from, like, honestly, fuck you. But yeah, I remember, when was it, maybe a year ago and a bit, and who I'm not going to mention because I don't want to, released a campaign which was boring as fuck. And it was just a group of just that honestly looked the exact same. I remember I put something on my story about it and I said, imagine how amazing this would be if it actually represented women as they come. And they sent me a lovely message saying, asking me to take it down, and they never asked to work with me again after that. So, you know, rather than actually looking at yourself and thinking, oh yeah, maybe we do need to be more inclusive, it's easier to ask people to make things go away. And this is why things don't change. I do feel definitely more so in makeup now. There really is no place for brands that aren't inclusive. When you've got the likes of Fenty taking over, you know, I'm glad that I see brands being called out all the time for releasing some shitty beige foundation shade range. No, it's insulting to not even acknowledge such a spectrum of people who are buying your fucking products. Like, it's ultimate disrespect to want these people's money but not want to acknowledge them. Are people worried it's going to take something away from them? Like, black women are and always have been the most beautiful. Like, it doesn't take a genius to look at that. Like, women have always tried to adopt so much from black culture while completely refusing to even acknowledge the women that this came from. You know, hairstyles, you see the Kardashians constantly culturally appropriating. And I mean, you have that platform, what the fuck are you doing with it? You know, what are you actually saying to the young people that follow you? Like, this is okay, you know, it's just a hairstyle, it's just this. Until you've actually lived that life, it isn't just anything. Like, it's people's lives, it's people's struggle, which you don't understand. So I don't really feel that people have the right to comment on things that they don't understand and never will understand. The thing you can do as a white person is to educate yourself and to learn and to actually unlearn a lot of the things that are unfortunately rooted into the culture. And like, it's so deeply rooted that people don't even realise they're doing it. People act like it takes some sort of incredible person to stand up and say, actually that isn't right, but why does it have to be that way? Why can you not stand up to your friends? Why can you not stand up to your family and just have a conversation with them and just say that isn't right? I don't know why you feel like that. There's actually so much history behind what you're saying. Just think, how do you explain this shit to a kid right now? Like, I don't want to have this conversation with my children, my grandchildren, whatever. I don't want to have to be telling them that this is just how it is, because nobody ever really thought anything was going to change. And so many people do have that like drop in the ocean mentality, which is so easy to have, because I think you naturally get that about everything, not just racism. It's the kind of a lot of what goes into the voting in elections. You know, people say, oh well, my vote isn't really going to change anything, but if 50% of the country feel that way, it does make a difference. You know, if the first person who decided to protest about this had thought, actually nothing's going to change, it's just that thing of, you know, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And that is basically all it comes down to. You know, if you are happy to sit at home and you're happy to say nothing, do nothing, be nothing, how the fuck is anything ever going to change, you know, if everybody feels like that? Now, I've seen people bashing people for putting things on social media. I've seen people bashing people for not putting things on social media. As long as you are actively trying to make a change, whether it's in your life, in your family's lives, or you're going bigger scale, you're going to the protests, whatever, you are making a change somewhere to someone. Nobody should be able to sit there and say to you, well, you haven't posted anything on Instagram, you don't care. People are worried about saying the wrong thing. Of course, a lot of younger people have got bigger platforms now. You know, you think some of these Instagram people are like 16, 17, 18. It's scary to have that many people watching and clinging on to every single word you say, when you could go away and educate yourself and actually be actively doing things in your own life. Of course, I would say if you have a platform, please, at the moment, please do use it, even if it's just sharing petitions to sign, reposting other people's posts. You know, the last week there's been so many amazing resources on Instagram and stuff, of like books to read, films to watch. You know, if you do have a platform at the moment, please be aware of that. It needs to be kinder in every way. you know, nothing's ever changed and nobody's ever won by being awful to anybody else, and some people aren't comfortable sitting and saying how they're feeling. It's very, very hard to put into words anyway, let alone with a situation like this. It's so difficult to put into words how you actually feel. So, you know, please try not to be awful to people. You know, these people who aren't saying anything, they don't have the intention of really sitting down and saying nothing, most of them, I hope anyway. In which case, please just share petitions you can, anything you come across that you think would be helpful to other people who may follow you. Never underestimate how important it actually is to just speak out about things. The days last week, I did feel really down, and I didn't really want to go on my phone because everything I was seeing was so awful. But you can't run away from things. You can't just bury your head in the sand and say, I don't want to see it. Like, if I don't see it, it doesn't happen. It's happening every day. The people that it's happening to, they don't have a choice if they want to see it or not. It, of course, is terrifying. But, you know, maybe this is time for things to change. I watched the memorial the other night, and they had the Reverend speaking on there. She made, like, a really amazing point about how this happening during the pandemic meant that we were all watching, you know, and everybody had to watch. How many times you've seen videos of stuff like this, but then you all go back to work the next day and, you know, your personal lives get in the way. And whereas obviously this happening now when the world was watching, it may just be what people needed to actually make a change. So that is the finished makeup. Very, very simple. Kind of just wanted to do something quick so I could sit down and talk to you all. In the description box below, I will link all the products that I've used. I'll also leave links to a lot of like helpful resources, petitions and information and stuff that I found on Instagram. I'll link that all down below as well, so you can check that out. Yeah, thank you for sitting and watching this video. Thank you for listening. Or going to any protests, please make sure you're wearing masks and gloves. Stay safe. Look out for your friends. Look after yourselves. Please try and be kind to people as well. If you do see somebody kind of saying the wrong thing, please just try and kind of like privately message them or pull them to one side and just explain to them like why how they feel is upsetting. I love you all so much, and I'll be back very soon.